Hello everyone, it's John. I'm hopefully getting this video in before we have another downpour of rain and I get drowned out by the overflowing gutters and the sound of constant rain. Thankfully, I don't live in New South Wales, which sadly is copping a fair amount of flooding, which is sad. Usually Queensland, we're normally the ones that cop a fair amount of flooding. We're being spared at the moment, which I hope we continue to, because my place gets flooded. So to all those who are in New South Wales, I offer you my condolences for those who have suffered loss, and I hope that you can recover as quickly as possible from the misfortune of this natural event. Those who live in Australia, and I have lived here a considerable period of time, this is part of life. Living here on this great continent is the fact that we suffer bushfires, we suffer flooding, and this is essentially not man-made. This man contributes to a small part, but for the most part these events occur cyclically and are part of the Australian cycle of life. Nothing we can do about it except try to not build on floodplains, which sadly we seem to do. Don't ask me why we do that. Yes. Or build in the middle of bushland and then wonder why we get burnt down. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be smiling. It's sad when these things happen, but you know, we take the risk with what it is that we do. So to suddenly say that we're the victim when we make these decisions, I think is sophistry at the best. But look, what am I here to talk about? Well, this is my weekly waffle, and there we go. I've gotten my bit of sophistry. Is it my sophistry or somebody else's sophistry out of the way? Who knows? My little dog, Pippin, I don't know if he'll join me today. He's too busy enjoying, I think, a bit of the break in the weather to go out and do a bit of a piddle and a poo in the backyard somewhere. So he's quite happy at the moment because the big black dog that has been with us, that I have been babysitting for a friend, has left us. So Pippin's a lot happier. But talking about dogs, I had my daughter. My daughter's got a little dachshund or dachshund. And she woke up to find the delightful little puppy chewing on a box of painkillers. And I don't know if you're aware, but painkillers are a no-no for dogs, and they will kill them. And of course, she loves that dog dearly, as does her partner. And so Dana, my daughter, sent me a text saying that Mac had been taken to the vets, and thankfully it looks like he is okay. And that was last Wednesday or Thursday, I think, was when this little incident occurs. So she's now hopefully made sure that nothing's lying around. Because my first thought was that, like with most dogs, if you drop food on or drop anything on the floor, they tend to go straight for whatever it is that you've dropped, thinking that it's food. Because I said to her, oh look, were you taking some painkillers? Because my daughter suffers, like her mother does, from endometriosis, and I was thinking, oh, were you taking some painkillers for that, and you accidentally dropped one of the painkillers? And Mac dashed for it, thinking that, oh, yee-haw, I've got something. But no, so that wasn't the case. So it's just one of those things you need to think about. So I was just wondering whether or not he might have jumped up on the bed, because Dana has a tendency to take a lot of her medication with her and leaves it on the bed. So I was just wondering whether or not perhaps he might have jumped up on the bed and found a box, because he's still a puppy. I think he's only just 12 months old, and probably decided he'd have a good chew. And as part of his chew process, obviously broke the foil, and one of the tablets must have come out. So I don't know whether or not he did or didn't swallow a tablet. Dana hasn't contacted me since. But yeah, animals really do become part of your life, and they're important. And it was interesting because on one of our news channels, they had a thing saying that with the many people now returning to work here in Australia, thankfully we're not as badly afflicted with lockdowns and restrictions. Many people now bought animals for company, and apparently a lot of the shelters and that are now saying that they're being inundated with animals being returned or being, surrendered to them. And this is very, very sad, that you've taken these animals to comfort you while you've been in lockdown, and now you don't have the decency to continue to look after them afterwards. And people are saying, "Oh, I can't afford to feed them. I can't afford to look after them." And I'm thinking, but you could afford to keep and look after them when you were in lockdown. Seems to be very disingenuous to me. You should never have bought animals in the first place, and I think that's very, very upsetting for me, because my children and I love our animals dearly, and there's no way I'd go hungry before seeing my animal go without food. So to see people having surrendering their animals just because they're an inconvenience, I think, as somebody said, you can always judge a person by the way they treat animals. And if they don't treat animals nicely, then clearly that reflects very poorly on them as an individual. And I think that's a fairly good indication. Gee, I'm sounding fairly... Yeah, I'm on my soapbox today, aren't I? So what have I done? Have I talked about anything about any about my games? No, not really. What am I looking at? Oh, apparently, what is it? Candlekeep something or other for D&D, a new book. It was supposed to come out last week, but I noticed that there was a thing saying, for Australia, we won't see it until, I think, the 26th. I just hope that they get sufficient quantities, because I think Tasha's volume, there was only so many copies came out, and then we had to wait until this month before sufficient quantities were back again for people to be able to restock them. So, I hope this is not the case again, but I'll find out when I talk to my friends who run a shop as to what the circumstances are. Because if this is going to be the case every time, that, we're only going to get limited quantities, and every time we're going to have, only so many, we're going to have a later release than promised. To be honest, I'm fast losing interest in D&D, and I'm in many cases looking at going back and playing my older role-playing games, particularly the first and second edition versions of the game. For instance, I'm looking at my RuneQuest, I'm looking at my Call of Cthulhu, a lot of the earlier Chaosium games, so before they got nerfed with the political correct brigade. That's, I like the games, but please leave your political agendas at the door, please, when you're doing stuff. I've no interest in that. But that seems to be filling our gaming companies these days. And look, I'll leave that alone, I think, because be that as it may, it's whoever, if that's what they want, that's what they get. It's not for this little black duck, which I suppose then comes on to the other one, isn't it? Is Disney cancelling yet more things that I knew when I was a younger person. Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. Look, if you're offended, don't watch. Pure and simple. Leave it alone for the rest of us. Really. But anyway. Game-wise, what did I pick up? I think I probably mentioned it. I think there's I think I picked up My City, which is probably coming up. I've done a week's worth of videos in advance. I tend to do my videos all in probably 1 or 2 days together. So I try to get everything so that it's a bit of consistency, and just in the event that if something happens to me and I lose interest, which is starting to happen again at the moment. I've having some problems health-wise, so I'm starting to become incredibly disinterested with a lot of things and a lot of people at the moment. John the Wishing Well is becoming very unhappy. Yeah. Tired of only being wanted when John provides. Yeah, otherwise it's sort of like, it's like those emergency boxes. Break glass when emergency or when needed. But anyway, yeah, so My City, I think the last game that I bought. I keep looking at, a lot of people put a lot of games, which gets my goat. Yes, I've got a lot of goats that I have a problem with. But second-hand game prices, particularly here in Australia, is ridiculous. The fact that people want like 80% of what the going rate of a board game is. And, I don't see a lot of people here in Brisbane selling games. And generally, if they do, they're things that don't really interest me. Or then when I do see what I do want, they're gone within 2 seconds of the bloody thing being put up. But then, of course, I never have the money, or it's pick up, and then by the time you factor in paying for the postage, you may as well buy the damn game brand new. Which you're thinking, well. See, here we go again. I've got the goat. Is in my day, which we're going back to the 70s, is that secondhand was 50%. Was the expectation of what something would be sold for. That was the expectation. But of course now it's, no, I want as much of my original money back as I can get. And that's just the way things are. I don't agree with it, but of course it's a market-driven environment, and sadly people are stupid enough to pay the price. So, and of course people go, oh geez, if I don't get it, I won't see it again. Particularly if it's a popular game and it's no longer in print. These are just the way things go, and mind you, of course, I guess that if it was 50%, they'd probably sell quicker, which of course would mean even harder for me to try and grab things. Oh dear, I'm just a grumpy old man now, grumpy old pensioner, I suppose, and the fact that you can't grab things when you want to grab things. So I don't know. It's the problem is the older you get, the more things you'd like to get, but then I look at it and I'm there going, So hard. So hard, it really is. But look, I won't bemoan any further. I've got, I think, an unboxing. I've got a miniature video coming up where I'm looking at War Gods of the Egyptus this week. There's an unboxing. What was the unboxing for? Can't remember what the unboxing for. Might be My City, I think, was the one that I got. So there's that. Continuing to look at older games that I've got sitting around. I think I'm having a look at Shogun from Milton Bradley, although that might be one I've still got to put together. Can't remember. Oh, God, I've got a dreadful memory. Then I might have a look at some of the old strategy and tactics games. So, as I said, my board game collection's about, or game collection, probably about 500. And then I've got all the role-playing games. So I think I'm going to start to try and mix things up a bit and include some of the role-playing games. Have a look at some of my old collectible card games that I've got. Like I got Warcry from Sabretooth Games that I loved playing that game, even though I played against some bastards that, I don't know how they managed to get their decks to work the way they did. But then again, I'm just the unluckiest person when it comes to playing games. Yeah. Anyway, look, thank you very much for listening to me for, what is it? 15 minutes worth of an old man's rambles. So, Pippin, you're going to come? He's wandered back in. He's looking out the door. Pip, you going to come say hello? Pip? Pippin? No, he's ignoring me because he knows I'm going to pick him up and shove him in front of the camera. All right, well, look, thank you very much. Until next time, signing off, the Honourable John.